silly can you get? Yeah, yeah. How silly can you get? Ooh, yeah.
Why hello there, dear viewer! Today we're gonna go over a bit of drama that happened with one of my favorite gaming streamers, Darkside Phil. With how much verbal diarrhea flew out of his mouth during his recent SIDESCROLLERS interview, he might as well change his moniker to Mudslide Phil. But what exactly happened to Phil, and who is this person to begin with? This will be a quick history that will cover several eras, since Phil's 15 plus years of being a lolcow has earned him in the same kind of eras as Chris Chan in his recorded chronicles, minus hilarious highlights like a liquid Phil duking it out in Street Fighter after accusing the real Phil of being Daniel Sylvester Padalecki.
Ian Brandon Anderson. Ian Brandon Anderson. Ian Brandon Anderson.
Also, for anyone unfamiliar with the term, a lolcow is a person who gets milked for laughs, by being a punching bag for social punishment. Think of it as a kid at school everyone would pee into the mouth of during gym class. But here is where the kid is so thirsty that they will tug on someone's wiener and say, "Got any pee for me?"
Oh my god, he's drinking piss. Yes.
Get ready for the next battle.
Phil Burnell, a proud Italian who grew up in Connecticut, used to work at Circuit City selling TVs for commission, which is job experience that really helped him later on, where he would be working at a helicopter factory and typing the word helicopter over and over again. But then something happened. The stars were misaligned, a black cat ran under a ladder and smashed into a mirror one day at work, and it happened. He had a slipped disc in his spine and could no longer bench press helicopters at the factory. Phil Burnell, a shining beacon of hope for every American Street Fighter Turbo player out there, was done for. But not all hope was lost, because thankfully, Phil had a camera and a TV, and using these two devices, he was able to MacGyver himself a new type of income, playing games on the internet.
Oh no! I hit the camera! Fucking tripod.
This was back in 2007, where the only competition in game footage uploads was Chris Chan and Leroy Jenkins. The mission? Make as many videos as possible and edit through nothing. There were also a couple of side quests consisting of collecting as many snorts, burps, farts, sniffs, coughs, and queefs along the way. Phil considers himself a comedian, and I cannot agree with him any more than I already do. Phil's online presence is funny indeed, but there are a few theories that it's not as intended as he hoped it would be. One major issue is how he acts while gaming, which is similar to how my drunken uncle acts around my stepsister. In other words, not very cordial and always ends with something getting smashed.
I pressed jump! I fucking pressed it! Work, controls, work!
Phil rose to fame for two reasons. One, he would fly out the handle whenever intoxicated, which was basically every video. Two, he talked a lot of smack to people online in order to piss them off. This gave Phil the secondary moniker, the King of Hate, which is pretty accurate. Amazingly, with zero political opinion being presented to anyone at any time, Phil was able to become one of the most hated people on the internet, but not in the "I hate football so I ignore it" kind of way. This was advanced hatred. Phil's anti-fans despised him so much that they were out to ruin his life in more ways than one. These people went to great lengths such as identity theft, taking his bank account information, hacking his online accounts that have his credit card information, swatting, which was more like sheriffing, doxing, pretending to be a company specifically to get his videos demonetized, pretending to be him and flagging videos of anyone using his content, pretending to be an alleged prostitute he hired, showing someone's micro dick pic and claiming it's Phil's, and many more that get lost in the sea of repetition. It sounds bad and it sounds like he's a victim, but this entire history revolves around Phil being wrong and his detractors being even more wrong than he is. I know, blasphemy. How dare I say that his detractors are even more wrong? We've all been under the impression that they're sweet little angels, haven't we? How dare I even utter a fraction of the thought that the people who hate him day and night have something wrong with them? but sadly, they do. After a few years of making videos, Phil became trapped in what I would like to call an anti-fan symbiotic relationship. It works as so. 1. Phil makes a video of himself playing a game or eating fast food. 2. Phil asks for money between videos because this is his means of income. 3. The anti-fan will make a video about him and say how pathetic or stupid he is. 4. More anti-fans will emerge from this negativity, and people will try to hop on the bandwagon to make their own anti-fan videos. 5. These anti-fans make their main source of income in the form of making fun of Phil. 6. If Phil doesn't make money from his videos, he leaves the internet. 7. If Phil leaves the internet, the anti-fans are forced to leave as well or are reduced to lesser content. 8. Anti-fans get more money when Phil encounters more drama. 9. Therefore, Phil's online presence must be kept intact at all times, and drama must be manufactured by the anti-fans when drama is not present. These 9 factors of the relationship carry on an endless spiral of hatred and deception, as anti-fans find different ways to make money off of him. A big problem for Phil is that he doesn't capitalize on this anti-fandom because he doesn't try to address any of the ever-present anti-fans. Phil's way of handling drama is to ignore it and to hope it goes away. He did this when he was caught caressing the cannoli on camera because he left the camera on during a stream.
Oh, the camera's on. The camera's been on the whole time, huh? I don't even know. Hello.
His excuse was that he was angry that day and really had to blow off some steam in more ways than one. This cum blast smelled around the world is what raised Phil to popularity. This was his money shot. Keemstar, the noble gnome of Drama Alert who lost all of his hair and now looks like Tomar, talked about him and brought Phil into the YouTube limelight. This was Phil's 1 in a million chance to take the newfound press and roll with it. Phones were off the hook, and people wanted to know everything about the amazing fap that made him go cross-eyed. What was he watching? Where did the load go? Did he eat pineapple? What color was it? We wanted answers, and he answered with, I was scratching my leg. Do you really want to know everything wrong with DSP? That very thing right there is all you need to know. Everything wrong with DSP is caused by his broken response mechanics. Unfortunately, like every locale, Phil suffers from an inflated ego. Ego is not born with, it is birthed within the mind over time. The Buddhist monk, Chogyam Trungpa, says, it is the process of identifying the self in terms of opposing ourselves to others. What he means is that we look at others as an opposition instead of an agreed existence, creating the vast barrier between self and anything outside of that. But a big factor in his quote, that people don't realize, is that the Buddhists don't believe in a self. The self, the ego, is a delusion that is constructed in order to protect ideas that revolve around vices and hedonistic desires. In other words, the ego of any locale is a nurtured process that is instantly caused by a cling to something that's not really there, which is no different than clinging to a hot coal that only burns you. This is why we call the charm of a psychopath superficial charm, because they try to fake it as if they make it, and it only works on people the same wavelength. A car salesman or a TV salesman, like how Phil was, will use this to get a sale because they will tell people what they want to hear in order to get money out of them. This is a way of using people as merely a means to an end because everything they said was insincere and everything they did was only done for their own benefit. This can get people money when they are crafty enough to keep the game going, but it seems that Phil's anti-fans are better at the flim-flam than he is. Phil's goal for the last 15 years has been to just survive on playing games for a living, and even when people ask, what is your plan for your retirement? All he can do is shrug and snort. His current 10-year plan is to try to do all the stuff he would say is a stupid idea in the past, like reaction videos and watch-alongs. There is nothing for him in the future at this rate other than running in his hamster wheel and hoping there are hamster pellets lying around somewhere, in the form of Twitch donations, which he is known to beg for daily.
Get ready for the next battle.
One of these people, who was able to capitalize on Phil's failure better than Phil could, went by the username EvilAJ. He's actually a swell fellow. I talked to him once in a group chat and we got along just fine. He used some quick editing abilities to condense videos into compilations while including angry YouTube comments here and there, added some sound effects to add humor, and started a new trend called "This is how you don't play." This trend infuriated Phil to the point where he decided to flag any "This is how you don't play" video in an attempt to save face. It would be a dirty shame if people found out he sucked at games. What would Obama think?
Don't shine that flashlight.
Like this? I'm a complete dick.
Phil's gaming cred was on the line here. It's not like letting people view Phil's terrible game skills to a wider audience was a good thing. Oh wait, it was. Phil knew this was a good idea, to have someone actually edit his work so that people can easily digest an entire game within a single setting, being able to enjoy the highlights of what was essentially a daily slush pile of raw footage. Phil even coughed up the dough to anyone who could create a good enough compilation with his blessing on what was allowed, and then he would post it on his channel as if this was an official "This is how you don't play." I tried to find this hidden gem so I could provide evidence as to what is permissible, but typing it into his channel resulted in nothing but unrelated gaming videos, and typing it into the YouTube search brought me to the playlist that other people made, which supposedly has around 1,600 fully edited compilations. Yes, you heard that right. Phil has gone through more than 1,600 games in his time as a YouTuber, and these games were able to provide enough failure for multiple people to make hour-long compilations out of poor decisions or bugged brain mechanics. The only other time I've seen this much dedication to compilations is when I first found out about PMVs. Wow! And besides Phil's war against people editing his videos and making him more known, Phil was also trying to flag down reaction channels who would usually play one of his non-gaming videos, like Ask the King or Weekly Announcements, with these channels criticizing everything Phil and his girlfriend did, all the way down to how they scratched themselves. There are a few reactionary anti-fans who survived their own personal woes, such as Almighty Tevin, who is a black guy that vapes a lot, and that's about all you need to know because that's all there is to him. Honestly, Tevin doesn't seem like a bad person, just a bad content creator who capitalized on the low effort ability of watching a DSP video and mumbling random insults about him over and over again, which supposedly has a market.
You come wobbling over to you, platform shoes on.
Yeah, I told you I was pretty tall. You didn't believe me?
I mean, mumble rap exists, so this is no different.
Get ready for the next battle.
A group that actually put effort into being anti-fans, a little bit too much effort I might add, were the notorious group called Sons of Kojima, no relation. These sons were Fred Fox, Moogle Fantasy, Che, Renegade Operative, Evil AJ, you might recognize that name, Loophole 572, Fast Fuck, Dr. of Fizz, and the creator of the group, Hollywood Kojima. There's not much to say about these people because the entire group collapsed upon itself, which is an amazing feat to witness. Their only job was to make Phil look bad, which is something that does itself, and they failed to do it because of what many experts are calling a terrible case of unrestricted Asperger's. The only one other than Evil AJ I've ever talked to personally was Moogle Fantasy, and he was a nice guy. We both love Final Fantasy IX, so there's the glimmer of hope for him. I would say he's the one that stands out, kinda like the nice gang member in a gang who was only in it for the fashion.
I was just in this for the fashion!
Him and Evil AJ are not that bad, just a little misguided. Meanwhile, the others were all trying to somehow one-up each other in who can be the most toxic person on the internet. Loophole's only noteworthy accomplishment was trying to troll Phil in a game called Destiny. Renegade Operative joined Evil AJ in making compilations that are considered not as good. Hollywood just left after making a big mess of nonsense. Fred Fox was considered an evil mastermind who manipulated everyone like a puppet master. Fazfuck is just a Fred Fuck minion who obeyed every command from his Dark Master. And the only one I can congratulate on a useful action is Che for joining the 43%. Che was the most Christian of the group and pulled a Jew Wario, if you know what I mean. Just kidding. Che died of cancer. I guess biology does matter. There's not much to say about these people past that. But if people want me to go into more detail, I might be able to whip up something. It's just hard to find stuff that they have done in their own videos, and because they wiped that unholy union off the internet faster than Phil can snort once a video starts. Now that's fast. If you want to know more about them, Almighty Tevin has a 5-year-old video about it called The Autistic Illuminati, so feel free to check that one out if it really tickles your fancy. It's 3 hours of him mumbling about their shenanigans, and it's one of those things where you can slowly absorb the information while gaming or whatever.
This is great. My buddy, bitch ass Fizz. Look at this shit. Dude, look at this. Look at this. Don't support people like Shanoa Cruz. End of story. If you monetize Phil's content, you completely invalidate any point you made. 19 favorites, 4 retweets, 5 replies. And then they posted why ads show up on my videos. All of them get claimed by either music owners or game developers. I have no control over it. Nothing I could do.
A lot of it is pedantic meandering and him having to go, anyways, after digressing like a madman. But it's a good place as any, besides some unlisted videos I have found in some playlists. Watching a few of these videos in the playlist sent me way back into the glory days of Daddy Trump's presidency, where I spent a lot of my free time trying to playfully mess with the SOK, when I was talking to one of Phil's former mods called Vidar. I have no idea what happened to him because he went radio silent after a while, but I only wish him the best due to how dedicated he was to helping children and how being a mod for a YouTuber nearly ruined his life. Honestly, the only reason I wanted to linger on a bit about the SOK is because they were a big part of Phil's history, in the fact that they would both ruin any fan's time with Phil's content, and even try to destroy the lives of anti-fans. They even went as far as trying to make sure nobody could make money off of Phil's content, while they themselves tried any loophole so that they can make money off of Phil's content. The stain they left on the community of both sides remains today, even to the point where people are speculating that the fall of the SOK caused a dramatic drop in Phil's Patreon and daily stream donations, which has caused theories to circulate about how they were behind a lot of Phil's income and placed view bots to keep Phil in his dreadful hamster wheel for their entertainment. Sounds like a lot of effort for a goof, but these people who made content on one man 24/7 aren't what we'd call normal, especially since a lot of them overdosed on the burgers made of ass.
Why are there hamburgers in your underwear?
Are you serious? How could there be... Oh my god! You're saying I have ass burgers?
Get ready for the next battle.
And enter SIDESCROLLERS, a fellow rise and fall tale of a channel, due to the host being the former owners of Screw Attack. The website Screw Attack was really big back in the day, being featured on every gaming website and even hiring James Rolfe to do the Angry Video Game Nerd when he started making his series, which is now a channel with almost 4 million subs. Last year, James had a little bit of drama with another channel called Red Cow Arcade, which was over his incompetence with video editing and always saying he's busy, but it's because he sucks at editing and is duct taping microphones to fish tanks or something. But all of that is chump change compared to the DSP drama. If you want me to talk about that little Easter egg, I could, but it speaks for itself from the videos on Red Cow Arcade. Their videos are long, and they say a mouthful about stuff that I know nothing about. Also, it's not like James sucking at editing or doing things like a boomer is anything new. This is a constant issue among many popular YouTubers, and it's not like James is e-begging every day. James's drama comes in the form of random hiccups, while Phil's drama is stage 4 heartburn. My point is that Screw Attack was huge, and then in 2019, it just fell off the face of the earth, and so did their podcast, SIDESCROLLERS, which they kept offline until now. Who was their first guest upon their return? Why, none other than DSP, of course. Now, here's the thing. Their stream was 5 hours long, and a lot of it was about stuff I already covered. So that should save us about 4.5 hours of stuff. There are only about 3 juicy nuggets that I want to pick in this cornhole of a podcast. 1. Phil losing his partnership with Twitch. 2. Phil's gotcha addiction. And 3. Keemstar offering Phil a job. And at the end of it all, I'm going to give some much needed financial advice in hopes Phil watches this video and learns something. If that doesn't happen, at least you'll know a bit more about capitalism than 90% of the college kids in your area who are making an OnlyFans or complaining about me on Reddit. So stick around for that little treat. With that said, let's get into the stream. Their introduction has a lot of nothing happening until they ask Phil about his online gaming persona, which is a subject I was fascinated with when I was younger due to my belief that Phil wasn't exactly himself when he's playing games. Like any other actor or anyone out in public settings, we have to wear a particular mask to present people with something that is presentable and appropriate for the situation. It has to fit the part. We can't just play games as our own boring selves, and so we act out a role in the form of a persona.
When you're streaming, Phil, who is streaming? Is it Phil or Darkside Phil?
Every single YouTuber and everyone who's not on YouTube has a persona within them that they can switch to at a drop of a hat. And this is a completely normal thing to do. Personas, under Jungian psychology, are archetypes of different human aspects that are to be activated and can be interacted with in our dreams. Jung also believed that the absence of our ego will cause personas to become our personality in an archetypical form. But this will cause an unstable mentality due to the personality being stuck on this set archetype. In other words, someone with an ego is in full control of their personas and they can switch even more accurately than someone without an ego, which correlates to the egotistical nature of Hollywood types and actors in general. So, to the guy who was hypothesizing that Phil is trapped in a method acting form after a stream, you are very likely wrong. I guess the big question is, what exactly is Phil's persona where he's complaining about bugged game mechanics, and how does this differ from his own self? I've said this answer way back in 2014 and I'll say this again here. It is his drunk persona that he's acting as. That's it. Mystery solved. The guy who's constantly burping, farting, laughing at everything, blaming other things and himself for his own incompetence, that is all stuff a drunk person does.
I didn't want to kill them. Why did they attack me?
What, is this a communist country or something? I thought this is America!
In the past, he didn't have to pretend to be drunk because he would drink while gaming, which is expected for someone like him because his gaming time was on his days off or after a long day of work. This was not a means of income in the beginning, and this was his hobby. People who work for a living tend to drink after work and hang out at a bar or with their friends. Phil would do this. Just play video games alone in his living room, and occasionally with a friend like John Rambo, who really loved air. If this guy sniffed and snorted like Phil does, he'd never need a vacuum. What I don't get is why people think this is something a guy like Phil would not do. I also don't understand why people believe he wouldn't know his drunk self enough to mimic it. However, I do understand why people find it hard to believe normal Phil is different from drunk Phil. Alcohol is a cause of two things, poetry and courage. In Norse mythology, we have the mead of poetry that grants wisdom or truth to anyone who drank it, which is similar to when we drink because we start babbling about stuff we usually suppress. Colloquially, we call this liquid courage due to how alcohol inhibits our reasoning skill and how we handle repercussions. When we do not fear consequences, we are seen as courageous, whether it's trying to hit on a fat pig we think is gorgeous, or trying to take Chuck Norris on in a fight. Drunk Phil is meant to be a more clumsy and open version of himself, which is why Drunk Phil will still blame the game for the creators instead of his own actions. With the fear of repercussions, aka social norms, Phil would not do that. But without social backlash in mind, he will blame others in esoteric ways. This is a difficult persona to hold daily for someone like Phil because he will blame others for why he doesn't get ahead in life, and this is one of those things that cause him to flag "this is how you don't play videos" instead of just rolling with it or capitalizing on it in an effective manner. So, it's not that he's a method actor trapped in a character, it's that the character he plays is one that is more of him with the real Phil being the socially aware one. Let's make an example about online characters, just so everyone is clear on what I'm disagreeing with. Angry video game nerd is a persona. The real guy is James Rolfe. The nerd gets furious at every little thing and makes up elaborate complaints whenever a game displeases him. James just goes, "Aw man," and keeps playing. James is the real person in this scenario, while the nerd is a made-up character that James made up. Nostalgia Critic is a persona. Doug Walker is the real person. When a movie does something that is questionable, the critic will shake his fist and scream in a high-pitched voice. If Doug saw the same thing, he would say something like, "Well, that's dumb," and then give it a quick complaint that lacks any detail or punchline. Doug may be a critic as well, in a knee-jerk way, but he would be more critical than the cartoony persona that screams and shoots his gun all over the place. Angry Joe is a persona. This is the review persona of Joe Vargas. In the situation, Angry Joe is just a more loud version of Joe Vargas because every critique is a complaint that Vargas makes during streams.
Final Fantasy MMO?
Yeah.
This year.
Not this year. Not this year.
Exactly. Didn't come out this year.
Okay, stop right here. You can tell right away this guy's fucking with me.
The only line drawn is that Angry Joe is louder than Joe would be in a normal setting. But even then, that's only an assumption. Plus, I don't think that Joe would dress up in a cosplay in order to talk to a friend about a game, but that's up for debate. Joe's angry persona is more of how he actually is without the social repercussions for being angry. As you can see here, Darkside Phil is a similar persona to the Angry Joe character, in the fact that they are both extensions of the real person, rather than a detachment. There is no method acting being done with these people, but there is method acting being done for AVGN and Nostalgia Critic. It's a tiny thing to correct, but I find the line of questioning to be incredibly flawed, and Phil's way of answering to be really easy to get lost in deception, especially with Phil's ego being so overwhelming. This is because Phil says it's a character and leaves it at that, with the side-scrollers unable to press further because they don't know how. So, since this is a complicated subject, allow me to repeat myself but really slow-like. Phil's persona is Drunk Phil, and that is a more real version of Phil. Nobody in their right mind would smash a controller when they're angry for a gag, and then complain that they don't have enough money to buy stuff right after. That is for real, not for play.
I'm gonna smash this fucking thing.
After that, the side-scrollers tried to ask about his Twitch troubles, where he was banned from Twitch for saying racist epithets. We're not sure what the word is, but it was during a jumble of words that might have rhymed with the word poonsticket or Mongol funny. The only problem I see here is mostly with Twitch, since their policies are going crazy ever since they started to virtue signal for people that are clinically online. The environment of people speedrunning all day or playing games while debating has become incredibly toxic in the most ironic way possible. The toxicity is caused by woke ideology and social justice rather than the opposite. I say this because now someone like Phil can get banned for saying a word that is not actually against the terms of service. TIHYDP has a wonderful video about this where people are saying all sorts of swear words about basketball Americans and nothing happens to them. People are always worried about swears and naughty words that are directed at a happy few, and they sadly have to worry. It's not that it's against the rules, but rather the rules can change at any time for anyone, depending on how non-woke someone is. And so Phil was trapped in this kind of environment that is sensitive to anything right of Marx and edgier than a butter knife. It's no surprise he was banned. Let's see how side-scrollers reacted to this event.
Alright boys, prepare the slave trade. We're selling it right off for profit.
That's okay, so what's going on there, man?
I'm just curious. What do you think I was trying to joke about?
That you're selling that girl to the slave trade? That would have put me on the detractor side, because it sounds like you were making a joke about selling that little girl to the slave trade. How is it not that?
That's the joke.
Hold up. Stop the music. Who the fuck does this person think they are with that kind of position? If they heard a joke, they would become a detractor? Detractor is a fancy Philism that means one who criticizes something, which in this case would be Phil Burnell. And Craig would criticize him for a joke about a black girl being sold off into slavery by the villain of a game that Phil is pretending to be for that moment? We know he's pretending to be the villain because Phil changes his accent and vernacular to fit the Wild West style of talking, and we know it's a joke because he laughs after it.
Were you acting as the sheriff in that situation?
That's why I did. That's why I did like the accent.
This is Family Guy level of edginess. I've seen more edgy things in a sock drawer. It's pathetic that these people are even trying to claim that you can't make a slavery joke, or even a child slavery joke, or even a black child slavery joke, when these are the offensive things that make jokes worth making. I can't put it into words how stupid the argument from SIDESCROLLERS is. And Phil, like the big dummy he is, just goes ahead and does lip service to virtue signal along with them.
If the light truly went off in your head to say like, I gotta change, don't you think it would be like, well, maybe I should bite my tongue on this one. I may be thinking it, but how about I bite my tongue on this?
Yes, I 100% agree with you.
Phil is not new to this problem, but I honestly believe him when he says he's ignorant of the severity, because I don't find Phil as one of those racial progressives who try to push wokeness down everyone's throat. He's just some guy who wants to eat fast food all day and watch wrestling while playing video games. He lives a simple life away from pointless Twitter drama and useless political banter, which is why he's ignorant of the horrible political climate on Twitch. Boomer Phil is one of the most appropriate things you can call him in so many ways, especially when it comes to him being out of touch with the current times. This is a problem for him because he keeps trying to put his dedication into areas that require political consciousness and knowledge of the current Overton window, which has been slid to the left so far now that it's offensive to even be Christian, which these people address in the video.
I know people who got booted off of Twitch because they're Christian and they're proud of it. And it's pretty crazy.
I am not a Christian, but I believe that there is something called a religious freedom that should be respected in any online space, which means certain religions should be allowed to be discussed and praised without being censored or silenced. Disagreement doesn't require disengagement. Twitch banning people for their religious beliefs shows that it's an environment that hates anything able to create and retain a functional society. But then it promotes and worships anything that progressives are advocating for. These are things that destroy society and can't function at all. At this rate, Twitch is just like TikTok but with webcams running all day instead of editing phone clips. Can anyone remind me what any of this has to do with gaming? This is the kind of environment Phil is trying to put all of his eggs into, and then he wonders why they come out rotten. Gee, Phil, I think it's because Twitch is the kind of company that puts someone who thought they were a deer in charge of what is considered offensive on the platform, and even had a website called The Gamer do a fluff piece for this nappy-headed doe by claiming they represent a very real group of viewers and streamers on Twitch. I'm sorry for derailing this to talk about Twitch being stupid, but this dumb buck that they hired isn't a troll. This is a revelation into how insane Twitch has become. Apparently, they think 1 out of 8 streamers and viewers are otherkin and trans, which, if that is the case, then this is an area of entertainment where trans and otherkin people make up more than their actual real-life demographic, which goes against equity standards because they are being overrepresented. Nothing the left advocates for makes a lick of sense, which makes my job that much easier. If this is what Twitch is focused on with their policies and who has to be catered to, then someone like Phil is better off not dealing with any of that nonsense, since he's eventually going to make an offensive joke against something silly like that, and for good reason. These are the people that are the butt of a joke at all times, for how goofy they are. These people are below Phil on the food chain, and that is why he was banned, despite him being part of the body positive and physically handicapped categories. If I was Phil and I was banned for such a milquetoast joke in an environment that doesn't even want Christians being vocal about their Christianity, then wear that Ben Hammer scar with pride and enjoy knowing that you're a normal human being who doesn't deal with that nonsense.
Banned, 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 banned. Gone. Forever.
I know it's weird to say Phil is being seen as a normal human being, but in the sense of what is comedic, Phil has more sensibility than the side-scroller guys have, but only when it comes to make his jokes, not during the streams where he's trying to agree with them and apologize for being edgy. Never apologize, never give in to the woke, never a virtue signal. If you do any of these, you instantly lose and you give them the power to cancel you. Phil gave them the power to cancel him indefinitely by agreeing with their terrible take on humor. even if he doesn't actually agree through his actions.
I think there's edgy content, then there's inappropriate content.
Any guy who says the word inappropriate, men are supposed to be inappropriate. Any guy who would say that means that he's a fucking bitch. And the only time you should ever think about the word inappropriate is when you're doing bitchy shit. Like if you ever think you had to take a shit, but you just had to piss, and you was just sitting there and with your dick between your legs, pissing in the toilet, and you just looking around like, fuck me, I feel like a bitch. This is inappropriate. This is inappropriate right now. Bitches think the word inappropriate.
Okay, Stuttering Craig, whatever you say. For the sake of argument, let's assume they didn't actually mean they are offended by any of this and are instead saying Phil needs to bite his tongue to keep his partnership with Twitch. This entire conversation started because Phil lost his partnership with Twitch after he tried to put all of his eggs into a single basket. This was lost because of a joke that was called racist. When taken out of context, racism was not his intent and didn't even matter since it was a joke, but it got him banned anyway and made the side-scrollers claim it's unforgivable. If all that is the case, why are you guys unable to say you accept it as being funny then? These dunderheads tried to save face in a follow-up stream where they addressed this horrible mistake, and this is what they had to say.
People thought we were overly critical about his joke. You know, like we were the joke police.
Right.
And I actually understand that criticism. I do.
Yeah,
like,
I get it too. Actually, yeah,
yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
I said yesterday, I don't like censorship. You know, joke what you want. I still don't have to like your jokes. I still can think that they're shitty. I don't know if you know this about me, but fucking with children, child trafficking, slavery, like those things, like I don't find funny at all. Like I don't give a fuck. Like that, it's a serious issue nowadays. To me, I don't find it funny. Sorry. Yeah. I think that's poor taste. That would have put me on the detractor side because it sounds like you were making a joke about selling that little girl to the slave trade. How is it not that?
That's the joke.
None of that makes sense, and I can't believe that these people are this stupid to double down after having so much time to find a way to come back to reality. Stuttering Craig and whoever the other guy is, fuck both of you. It's not funny. Who are you, Paulie Bornstein from the Maxwell Show? It's not funny.
Puddle of AIDS jokes aren't funny. I don't think listen to me. Do you have to have AIDS to know that AIDS jokes aren't funny? No.
Wait, keep watching.
So what's the difference? Well, you know, puddle of AIDS, funny. No, puddles of AIDS are not funny.
All right. Selling a black slavery girl in the Wild West is not funny. I don't care who you are, it's not funny right there. Who cares if you think it's funny? You can still make the joke because your subjective opinion on what's funny means nothing to whether or not a joke was humorous or a joke to begin with. I am sick and tired of these self-righteous retards pretending they know what funny is when they wouldn't recognize it if it was in the shape of a well-endowed black gentleman who slapped both of their stupid faces with his BBC and left a sludge trail on their glasses. I hope anyone who says these things aren't funny slips in a puddle of AIDS with their big stupid clown shoes and lands face first into their own asshole. It's not funny.
That's not funny.
I hope they choke on a mocha-flavored miscarriage while slobbering on their grandma's salt and pepper cunt and drench it down with a horse cum it rode in on. It's not funny.
To me, I don't find it funny. Sorry. Yeah. I think that's poor taste.
The world will do us all a favor if a chimpanzee with monkeypox popped off their cock like a Lego brick, put it on a hot dog bun, scarfed it down, squeezed out a fresh log, and pulled the old switcheroo where the severed limb is located. It's not funny.
That's not funny.
Someone should take their daughters and expose their ankles in the Middle East so a rowdy mob of nomads can bury them up to their heads and lob Twin Tower rubble at them. Then have a wizard turn them into goats so that the nomads can become fully erect and give them a good old-fashioned dirty churro. It's not funny.
That's not funny.
The second they sit cross-legged on the couch while wearing braces, I want Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, and John Wayne Gacy to have their way with them while all of them are doing blackface. It's not funny.
That's not funny.
I hope they get trapped in the Auschwitz Porta-John and fuck every child hiding in there. It's not funny.
That's not funny.
There should be a neo-Nazi in fully soiled whitey-tighties who orders them to bite the curb. Right before they shove their swastika-shaped cock into their ass, then he shaves his own pubes in the shape of a cross and lights them on fire. It's not funny. Of course it's not funny to you, because both of you are pussies who can't take a joke for anything in fear of being cancelled. All of this was able to be said on YouTube, no problem. All of this was way more edgy and inappropriate than what Phil could ever think of. He's nowhere close to how offensive someone like Bill Burr, Jim Norton, Daniel Tosh, Dave Chappelle, or any other offensive famous comedian is doing up on stage in a crowd of incredibly diverse people. The only thing causing any restraint on where the line is drawn is the platform you're doing it on. And even then, there are things I couldn't say because I can't even think of them. In their moment of trying to save face, they said they don't like the idea of making fun of slavery because there are sex slaves to this day. Where? In Africa? Are these people automatically enslaved because Phil made the joke? I want them to name the people who are harmed from the joke. Use as many clicks and clacks as you want. Oh wait, they don't have to, because literally nobody was harmed by the joke. The jokes that Phil has said are nothing compared to the ones I made, and side-scrollers are fools for looking more pathetic than Phil in this single occasion. It's a single loss, a single L that they had to take, but it's a massive detriment to their entire philosophy, where they have lost all respect from someone like me, and I have zero reason to take these guys seriously. I don't mean to shoot the messenger here, but it's really hard for someone like me to take them seriously when they began with such horseshit virtue signaling, all just so they can try to make Phil look bad. Phil has it on point when he reacts to their follow-up streams. These guys are not neutral, they were detractors from the get-go. And to make things worse, they are woke detractors. I'm not even trying to defend Phil here, he is the subject of what is so wrong. But like I said before, the detractors are competing with him for who can get everything wrong, and it's astounding to watch. I tried to root for these guys and have them come out on top, and they ended up looking weak and pathetic before Phil could even get a word in. Then when Phil is no longer in the room, they start talking mad shit about him as if he was their enemy. Every single person they had on afterwards tried their hardest to make psychological studies on him and determined what he was lying about and what he was telling the truth about. But I guess it's okay to do this as long as they get views and make money on their videos, because the only thing that matters is money, right? We already know that Phil has an ego. There is nothing that can hide that because he's very open about having an ego. We already know that Phil plays a persona while playing his games. He is very open about that, and there is no question about it, other than the questions that they should have asked and didn't. We already know that he lies when he's embarrassed about something. There's no use in pressing further into the lies that are well known. What I don't like is when they try to lie or bring up some strange imaginary rule that doesn't exist just to claim that he's a bad person, or to directly admit that they are intending to be detractors. None of this is needed, because this is Phil we're talking about. These people, the side-scrollers, are not neutral and they are not there to play fair. Phil is even more right when he said that they profited off of his appearance because they did just that. More views for them, more shitting on Phil for views, more people joined in to talk shit about him. Congratulations, side-scrollers, you joined the anti-fan symbiotic relationship, and I doubt you're going to be good at it. Not to make a prophecy, but I expect the hubbub about them to die off the second that they stop talking about Phil, because that's when they're going to go back to featuring people's hobbies and talking about useless holes who provide nothing to the conversation. It's a mystery why Screw Tech went tits up, isn't it?
We interrupt this program for an important news announcement.
Future me here, because the video production was on hold for a while. I went to check a month later on how the side-scrollers are doing, and I was right. A lack of engagement because of a lack of Phil. Imagine my shock.
Get ready for the next battle.
Speaking of big tits bouncing around in the wrestling ring like the beautiful bolt-ons that were revealed at the Ches female MMA competition, the gang got into some heat over Phil's gotcha game addiction. Let's watch.
Just a real simple yes or no. Do you currently still play WWE Champion?
Yes.
Well, there you go. Mission accomplished. Can we all go home now?
Can I ask you, Phil, have
Sure.
you ever spent money on this game?
Uh-oh. Don't tell me.
Of course I have, yes.
So
Probably when the game first came out, yes, I spent over $100 on it. Total, I couldn't tell you. It's definitely total under $1,000.
Okay, look. There is a strange thing going on here that isn't being addressed by either side, and I think we need some clarity to understand what's even being accused. Phil is someone who plays games for a living, and for some reason when he's away from his TV, he is always playing some mobile phone game as a secondary. When he's taking a shit, when he's eating dinner, when he's fucking the wife, when he's eating his wife's shit for dinner while fucking her, he's there playing a phone game and possibly paying thousands of dollars for what are considered gacha rewards, where you pay money to get a chance at something good, similar to how loot crates work. But this is a game where you play in a Candy Crush style and somehow it's competitive? Honestly, the game is garbage. I got through the tutorial and uninstalled it because it's below even my low standards. The only novelty to it is that you can collect wrestlers and outfits, which is supposedly costing Phil thousands of dollars, in what is meant to be a leak of his account profile called They Call Me DSP. Everyone believes this is actually Phil's account. I mean, come on, that's his business handle, case closed, right? Or is it? As much as I want to believe in the conspiracy, I am sort of on Phil's side here.
Hang him!
Now, before you get angry, hear me out. What exactly is the point of Phil making his personal Google Store account the same name as his business account? If I had a personal account that I didn't want people to know about, because I went through years of doxing and years of turmoil at the hands of trolls, then why would I leave something like this so easy to find and so open? Like when I heard the story about a Jewish basketball player who walked by a dollar and didn't pick it up? I'm having trouble believing any of this. Side-scrollers knew all about how people went through great lengths to pretend that Phil's wife, the woman who's featured in nearly every vlog he makes now, was a prostitute he hired to hang a Christmas star on a tree for Christmas. For some reason, they think that amount of effort is now lost or absent when it comes to making Phil look bad financially. Again, they don't have to do anything because it's Phil we're talking about. That's like having a bunch of grandmas cry #MeToo after Chris Chen got out of jail. No matter what, I think this entire thing is a nothing burger, due to the fact that Phil is someone who plays games for a living and has to buy new games in order to play them. One of the accusations is that Phil is spending over $5,000 on business expenses per month, and that would be incredibly concerning if it were true. Phil allegedly made around $80,000 a year or something like that. I understand that recently he has had less revenue and something like $60,000 a year in business expenses would cause him to scrap by with $20,000 in order to pay for 2 houses, his brand spanking new BMW, and whatever slop his wife throws into his trough. With the kind of food that they get delivered to their door and the kind of stuff he does, I doubt Phil is capable of living on $20,000, except for the fact that he accumulated $500,000 in debt due to mortgages and not paying his taxes or his bills.
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
I was with Phil on this one in a vacuum, but after realizing he just got out of his bankruptcy and thinking of how he could even get into such a thing, I realized his excuse is the only one that truly sucks. Remember when I said he made $80,000? That was for a single year, in 2018, with the following year of 2019 resulting in him making $56,000, and with his wife helping him to make an extra $18,000 with her part-time job, which means he made about $80,000 to $70,000 each of these years. Because he's a small business, he would have to put aside about $10,000 for federal tax alone, and pay a quarter of it every quarter in estimated tax payments. I know that from experience because I have to do that myself. Granted, this is not including the standard tax deductions or the alternative where he can use his business expenses, which is the better alternative when business expenses are higher than $25,900 for the year of 2022. But then that would mean he had to have spent over $26,000, which means him using business deductions as a gaming channel is a little suspicious. The reason I say it's suspicious is because he would somehow be spending about $2,000 a month on his business, which would put him rather close to that $5,000 accusation.
What do your business expenses look like? Specifically, you know, there's this $5,000 business expense every month.
Number one, I don't do my own taxes. I have a tax guy to do. I pay him to do it. Okay. What are considered expenses that a tax attorney wants to know you're spending every month? Your mortgage, because if you work from home, I guess that's part of it. I don't know. Again, I'm not a tax guy, but it costs your mortgage. All of your utility bills that apply.
Through process of elimination, we can determine that Phil is spending something closer to $5,000 a month than to $0 a month on business expenses, simply by him being married and admitting that he writes things off on his taxes through his tax wrangler. Oh yeah, and there's a screenshot of him spending about $5,000 every month on his bankruptcy filing. Remember when I said he made $80,000? I thought it was before expenses. That was after expenses. He spent $60,000 in a year and still came out with $80,000 for himself, meaning he makes about $140,000 per year before expenses. He makes six figures as a streamer playing games. He did this and ended up with $500,000 in debt. Also, now he will complain in every stream that he can't afford anything. Even something like $300 is a big deal for him. I make nowhere near as much as Phil, and I can easily cough up $300 for something. Sherlock Holmes, Columbo, Batman, Dick Tracy, and Adrian Monk are all scratching their heads going, where the hell did the money go? Phil, out of all the things you try to lie about, you go for the stuff that's public information, which was made public from your bankruptcy. And everyone is focused on a stupid game that nobody actually cares about. The WWE Champion's gag is a red herring. It is a distraction to the real issue that Phil is making nearly $10,000 every month and ends the year with $80,000. Phil doesn't need more money. He needs to have less expenses. I don't think it takes a math magician to find out that he'd have more money if he just spent less on his business. The tricky part of this endeavor is that I believe he's spending too much money on something. There's too much waste somewhere. But no matter what, it's not WWE Champions. Even if he did spend $2,000 on a gacha game like he's Hayden from Agritsuko, that number is nothing compared to the $60,000 that he's spending on his business and what got him into $500,000 of debt. Let me say this even more clearly so that people know my position. $2,000 is about 3% of $60,000. You can easily find a number by doubling both of them to have the 60 closer to 100, and then you remove the 0, making it 4 over 120, which looks a lot like 3 over 100. It's somewhere between those two numbers. This 3% is what people are trying to argue over and press Phil on. I'm sorry, but I'm more interested in the verified 97% that remains as expenses. If you add $2,000 to the $60,000, there's not much of a difference to the total amount of money possibly wasted. All you did was add 3% to the total number. If 3% of money wasted is such a big deal to everyone, perhaps we can reduce 3% of money wasted somewhere else, right? Granted, I could be missing something. This could all be the cause of Twitch or Patreon fees, something that went by me. I can accept that. But either way, Phil needs to spend less money on his business, or else he'll never get enough money to live on for the future. But there is one guy who enters a chat who has plenty of money. Enough that he's willing to handle Phil $50,000 for pretty much nothing.
Get ready for the next battle.
The YouTuber Keemstar is a rich guy who knows how to work the system and is proud of retiring early, and he should. This guy is a beast and has every reason to be happy about the position he's in. He's about to turn 40 and he's able to retire. He doesn't have to work, he is past level 1, he beat the final boss. Now he's enjoying the ending credits and is in New Game Plus mode or DLC or whatever. I am happy to say that Keemstar is the smartest and most respectable person on the stream, which isn't saying much. Whatever you want to think about Keemstar, given his history of manufacturing drama, or getting information wrong, or possibly assisting in getting Leafy as Here's adorable dick pics to be posted all over the internet, the guy knows what he's talking about when it comes to entertainment and money. Copying him is a benefit, not a detriment. He also knows what it takes to make it in business because he tries to give Phil business advice into changing his ways. The ways that have been failing him for years, and all Phil has to say is,
I'm the little guy. You are a big guy, Keem. You're huge. You have a giant reach on the internet. Do you not understand that the stuff that you say and do has repercussions for everyone around you?
What will you learn? That your actions have consequences!
you know the drill. Phil says he's a tiny little guy. Insert fat joke here. But Phil is entirely wrong in this part of the encounter. He believes that it's better to shoot the messenger than to actually listen to the message. Sure, Keem could have worded it in a way that is less abrasive and can actually get into the head of a professional victim, but how exactly can we say this to a person like Phil? There is no reasoning with a person who focuses on how something is said instead of what is said. I am personally a firm believer in tough love. It is the masculine thing to do because women are the ones who need things sugar-coated. Sadly, with the lack of exercise, the dramatic intensity of daily stress, and simply by aging, Phil is on a path to becoming that bitter old man who yells at clouds. And it's safe to say that because he uses that as a segment and tries to hide behind the irony. This is like if Lindsay Ellis tries to make a segment called Radical Feminists Making Bad Takes and calls it ironic. Nobody is fooled by that, and announcing their own crippling faults is just a celebration of flaws that nobody wanted to actually celebrate. This is a defense mechanism that the locals always use in an attempt to get people to laugh with them instead of at them. But the ego of the locale doesn't allow ridicule that bruises the ego, so there is a limit to how far the meta-agreement goes. The harsh reality is that eventually Phil will be the old man who yells at random employees at Walmart once his emotional outbursts become addicting enough to do them in public. This will result in the Chris Chan GameStop battle of 2014, but times 9/11.
Don't call anybody.
That's right. 1,834,754.
Ah ha ha, you're on level 1. Ha ha ha, Phil, level 1. Yo, you've been for 15 years, you're just on level 1. Do you think I need that? I already have enough shit in my life going on. So much stuff. I don't need Mr. Big Time punching down on me.
Honestly, yes, you do. When people piss themselves in public, we childishly shame them at a young age as kids because we don't want everything to get pissed on. When an adult does it, we just awkwardly call the cashier to clean it up and they go back to touching everything you bought. Someone who's been failing in making enough money to get by needs to be made fun of so that they can do the appropriate thing of making enough money to get by. Getting by doesn't mean buying a BMW or 2 houses. It means spending your money in a smart way that benefits you. Dave Ramsey is a money advice expert who is tough as hell on his collars, and it's because he lived through the traumatic failure for years. Eventually, by reading the Bible, he learned that all he needs to do is live below his means and make his money slowly until he can live in peace. This is the most basic thing possible for anyone to understand, and sadly, we're in a consumerist society that rejects capitalism by forcing people to give up on their private property and instead depend on corporations that support Marxist modes of operation. I don't blame Phil for believing the lie that he has to work harder instead of work smarter. Imagine if Phil just saved money and didn't work as hard. Maybe did something online with programming or even blogging. I'm sure he could do game reviews and movie reviews instead of streaming and get a better means of income for less work. But he depends on the anti-fans as much as they depend on him. In my Lindsay Ellis book review of Axiom's End, I talk about how her book is a traditionally published work, but here I want to relate to how she put in a stupid amount of effort into making it traditionally published, just for the bragging rights. She would have made more money if she just self-published it, but she wanted the bragging rights and the Hugo Award, which now she has neither, so she went the long way around to end up behind where she should have. This is the same self-important nonsense that Phil gets trapped into thanks to his ego. Phil, like every other locale, gets stuck in the idea that they need to aim for something big in order to make money. All the while, they lose out on tons of money because they don't want their egos bruised, or they try to inflate their ego more through things they can brag about. Then they lose the things that they want to brag about or are embarrassed of them. The bragging doesn't put gruel on the table, you big dummies.
The detractors are your customers. The haters are your customers. And they're more loyal than the people that give you money, that donate on your stream.
I want to agree with Keem here, but he's only half right. They are a customer in the form of viewers, but not quite in the form of supporters. The anti-fans are the ones who support him by being whales who donate money or keep him going so that their own content can be created, which is done as a sort of payment for raw materials so that their own product can be refined and produced for their customers. So what happens is that the haters are the customers of the anti-fans, while the small group of anti-fans are the customers of Phil. Think of it like Phil is a cow that can be constantly milked over and over again for his lols. The anti-fan will give him some grass to produce the milk, and then this anti-fan collects the milk in a bucket. The milk is then distributed to a facility to be pasteurized or whatever, and is turned into all sorts of things: yogurt, cheese, butter, things that are worth more than milk alone. These products are then used to create other products that are cooked or prepared by a restaurant or factory, so then those are worth even more than the previous products. Through this process, I can be a fan of cheesecake without buying any milk from that initial anti-fan or from the cow itself, because I had nothing to do with that initial grass. The problem for Phil is that the haters know that his milk exists, but they don't give him any grass, and they don't even know what this cow does other than make milk. Their consumption remains with secondary sources rather than Phil himself. Phil can fix that by simply letting people make fun of him directly, and all he has to do is talk shit back to them as a direct relationship, because then random people can easily get milk from him through such an interaction. People want engagement, and they don't get that when they aren't able to engage with him, or else they get banned or blocked or whatever. I apologize if this example triggers anyone, but Daddy Trump's Twitter account was the best thing since sliced bread because it allowed people to support his goofy tweets while allowing the milkers to act as if they had a gotcha, and they capitalized on the hatred of his tweets. Trump also had people who liked what he did and what he had to say on his Twitter account before he was banned from the site. If Trump was able to have people donate to his campaign and beg for his Twitter account to come back, why can't Phil have the same reaction? Simple. People need to actually like what he does to begin with. Phil intentionally prevents fans from occurring naturally because he's too stuck up in his own egotistical nonsense, and he doesn't try to pander to any group. He doesn't try to win the crowd over. This is why I believe that if Phil wanted to prove his worth in the place of being a comedian, he should do stand-up comedy as a full-time job, which is a job that requires the comedian to win the crowd over. He doesn't have to lift anything heavy, he doesn't have to stand up on the entire time because they always have a stool, and he is someone who has been doing comedy in front of an audience for 15 years. I'm sure that has some material that he can use. Imagine, if you will, Phil up on stage in front of dastardly drunkards and bodacious babes, the spotlight's shining on his snout, and he has to say his lines in front of a live-action crowd. This kind of interaction would make or break him. The thought of DSP at a comedy club is mind-blowing. It would sell out that very day, mostly from haters. Who would be trying to heckle him? There are comedians like Steve Hofster who make their entire YouTube catalog all about dealing with hecklers, and he wins the crowd back in pretty much every video.
Do I always have that stupid look? No, I want to understand the idea behind saying that out loud. Do I always have this stupid look on my face? Who said that? No, I don't think he has a stupid look at his face. I think he has stupid thoughts in his head.
Phil could easily do that, and make tons of money from people trying to ruin his act. And the best part of it all is that he could drink on the job. It's a win-win, lazy legs. My idea might be a bit crazy, but Keemstar has an even crazier one.
I want it to solve this issue for not just you, but Wings and Boogie. The solution really is to get the three of you to do a podcast.
This is his proposal. Have Darkside Phil, Boogie, and Wings of Redemption all in one podcast and just have them talk about anything. This is the dark triad of YouTube. The three most hated gaming YouTubers that are the most profitable lolcows. This is like the David and Bobo show. But being enjoyed day after day. All they need is Chris Chan and Ethan Ralph, and they would have a Power Rangers team that would blow the internet into the next solar system. This is the most beautiful idea I've ever heard in my entire life. Separate, they are struggling to make ends meet, and they are always the butt end of a joke. But together, they are the mighty force that will make millions, and all of them can live in luxury. All they need to do is accept the initial $50,000 per person that Keemstar offered, sign up with him, and all of them are going to be drinking champagne off of AOC's brown ass while riding tigers instead of a private jet. Alright, Phil, what do you say? Deal or no deal?
I have absolutely no problem doing anything with Boogie or Wings.
Yes?
You know, that me doing a collab with them, just doing a fun podcast, is not out of the question.
Yes?
But your issue is with Keemstar and his business principles.
Correct.
Phil, that right there is bullshit. You are not afraid of working with Keemstar. You are not trying to take the moral high ground, and you are not trying to make this about ethics. This is ego, ego, ego. The very thought that Phil would deny working with Keem, for whatever reason, is absurd. You're not marrying the guy and sleeping with him. You're going to have him as a boss who went to you to hire you. And the job is to talk to other people. This is typical networking. This is that full-time job thing you were talking about when you were trying to make your 10-year plan. Phil keeps going, I don't know, who would hire me with this kind of reputation I have? And there's Keem going, I will hire you and pay you to take the job. Phil, for once in your life, really think about it. You get $50,000. Enough money to pay for most of your yearly bills. You don't have to have the business expenses you have, which currently range around $60,000 a year. It's like you're getting $110,000 when you think of it. In a previous video, I talked about how Steven Crowder refused an offer because of his own ethics, and because it was a shitty offer. That made sense for Crowder to say no to it, even if people were confused. Here, we have Phil with a not-so-Christian ethical framework, and with an offer that is better than his current situation. This is a chance to network and make something of himself. There are so many possibilities from this door that's opening for him. But Phil wants us to think that this is about ethics. That somehow Keem is not ethical enough to work with him. Or that there's something wrong with working under Keemstar. He gets pushed on this one more time, and all Phil can do is complain that Keemstar is going to have two fat guys duke it out in a ring for a chocolate bar.
I took Wings of Redemption and Boogie 2988, who were willing to work with me and understood this business opportunity. And I'm setting up a boxing match between the two of them, and I'm going to break the internet with this.
Okay, now let me give you my perspective, okay?
Okay.
Wings of Redemption, Boogie, two desperate guys. We all know they're down on their luck. They could definitely use some money, right? We all know this. They
Yes.
publicly project that to the internet. They're both, technically, from what we can see and understand, they're kind of unhealthy. Maybe not, who knows? But you only know what they project, correct? Do you not feel that having two people like this, overweight, possibly unhealthy, doing a boxing match against each other so that everyone on the internet can laugh at them, could possibly, just possibly, be either putting them in harm's way or maybe be considered morally reprehensible because of the repercussions that could happen during this match?
Keem's response to this is glorious. Check it out.
Every single influencer boxer, whether they're healthy or not, is putting themselves in harm's way for entertainment. They're all warriors, and they all deserve respect. Wings of Redemption and Boogie haven't gotten any respect. In fact, it's disrespect. Very similar to you, all right? And by doing this, they will get respect. Whether people laugh or not, they are going to get respect for jumping in that ring. But you mentioned that they're unhealthy. Of course they're unhealthy. But I can tell you right now, behind the scenes, and nobody knows this, both of them have actively already lost weight training for this fight. This is a positive thing in both of their lives. And I don't think either one of them have the ability to seriously hurt the other. Do you?
Phil, in his infinite wisdom, tried to virtue signal for fat people everywhere, and lost. Sadly, I think that the only political thing that Phil currently follows now is wokeness, and that might be just something that comes with the territory of Twitch and gaming these days. Despite Phil looking better now, he looks like he lost weight since the happening, and kudos to him since that's harder to do when we get older. But virtue signaling for fat people, only to be told that they are losing weight, is an instant knockout from Keem. With a single sentence as hectic and wonky as it was put together, Keem was able to instantly put himself on the moral high ground, win the crowd, and all while paying two fat dudes to punch each other in the face. This guy's like a goddamn wizard. Phil is more like a jizzard.
This is not a serious boxing match, Keem. They're not boxers. They don't know anything about boxing.
They're going to be getting checks in the mail that are consequential this week for childcare.
We can all agree here that Phil has nothing other than heuristic non sequitur. They can be midgets on roller skates for all I care. They don't have to be professional boxers to make it entertaining. Keem is talking about a free boxing match that will bring in money from ads and sponsors. This will get more attention than the new Rocky movies, and all Phil can say is that they aren't boxers. The reason everyone wants to see it happen is because they aren't boxers. For someone who plays games for a living and watches wrestling, he seems to have forgotten the point of entertainment. Perhaps I can explain it in terms even Phil can understand. If a fat guy with a history of talking shit to others online is given the opportunity to beat up another fat guy who has a history of talking shit to others online, then we have two fat guys with celebrity who are all talk and no walk. Finally, seeing them walk the walk with safety precautions in place will be like a cum shot that releases all the talking they did earlier. If they fight well, we enjoy it. If they fight poorly, we enjoy it. Failure has always been funny because it's an intention going one direction and then the result going another. This causes a state of absurdity that we respond to with laughter. Any comedian who understands anything about comedy would have this as Comedy 101. Phil, who's been doing improv comedy for 15 years, doesn't even know there's entertainment to be had, let alone humor.
Are you gonna watch?
No!
Yes, you are.
No,
yes,
I'm not! I don't watch
believe
that
you.
crap! No!
Keem tried to bring Phil into the mentality of who would find it entertaining, and Phil tried to virtue signal again in a panicked Beavis style "No!" As funny as his reaction was, it's another failure on his part. Phil says everyone else would watch something like that except for him. Why should I, as an audience member, try to side with someone who is separating himself from everyone else? Remember that part when I said ego is about someone setting themselves as opposition of others? This is the ego talking again, when Phil tries to go against the audience. In his attempt to claim moral high ground, he lost the crowd. Phil's reaction is no different than if someone says, "Who likes puppies?" and the crowd cheers and then he goes, "I hate puppies," right after the clapping subsides. Get enough white women in that crowd and he's going to get crucified by the dog moms. For someone who's trying to get people on his side and find him as approachable, his weaselly nature in opposition to everyone else doesn't really make the cut.
That's not what I'm about. I'm on the internet to share my passion for games, to have a cool social interaction with this, my viewers, my fans, whatever you want to call them. I'm not here to make a mockery of myself or, do a publicity stunt. I don't do that kind of stuff.
Okay, Phil, whatever you say. You never try to make a mockery of yourself when your streams have you wear funny hats and you make a mockery of yourself with your persona. All this stuff that you spent 4 hours on trying to establish as what you do for your livelihood is now erased. Never happened, dude. Publicity stunt? Hell no. There's no need for publicity when his current views make him enough money to pay the bills. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. They don't. Which is what he spent 4 hours talking about. I know that it takes a lot of brain juice to retain a thought for under a day, but perhaps the Joe Biden disease is hitting Phil now that he's 40.
I just want to be in my lane with my viewers, doing a good, fun stuff. I have no aspirations of grandeur or anything like that. I don't want to blow up because I did a stupid internet boxing match with someone. It's so stupid to me. Immature.
Phil said something is immature. We're sorry, Phil. We didn't know that being a wrestling fan and playing games all day while laughing at fart jokes was the mature thing to do. Now we know he draws the line at manly physical activity in front of a camera. So the Three Stooges tried one last time to get Phil on the podcast and gave him a free $50,000. What Phil had to say was rich. Let's see it.
You are someone who has no self-awareness and you think that you're the most important thing. You tweeted on your Twitter that I should contact you about a business opportunity. No one does that. They contact a person about the business opportunity. He's being egomaniacal.
Keem told Phil that if someone huge was getting a call from Keem, that huge YouTuber would answer. Phil complained that he wanted everything in writing because he's paranoid. That part is fair enough, but he now twisted it to call Keem egomaniacal. This is what we call projection, the reaction to accuse others of what you yourself are doing in order to hide the fact that you're doing it. Phil did the "I'm not crying, you're crying" routine before anyone could even notice the tears. When Phil wants Keem to obey Phil's time slots instead of the other way around, is that egomaniacal? Keem is someone who is working with multiple people on multiple projects, and said that he had to talk to at least 20 people a day. He has to run 20 different time slots daily, and Phil wants him to move around his schedule for Phil, so that Phil can get paid and for Keem to pay him. You're not supposed to bite the hand that feeds you, especially when you're starving. Phil took an Amy Schumer-sized chomp out of Keem's hand in this instance, and Keem still tries to feed him. The gnome knows no bounds with this kind of dedication. He must really want that podcast to get made, and I don't blame him. So, after all that trouble, Phil leaves empty-handed, and Keem leaves without the third wheel for his epic podcast. The true loser here is all of us, because we are now robbed of the opportunity to see DSP, Boogie, and Wings ramble on about games and whatever they had for breakfast. Honestly, is this even a good idea? If they forced them to answer questions in super chats, maybe. It would be funny to see the three of them flip out. Is this going to be the next Joe Rogan experience? Think of it like this. The three of them are in a room together and they have guests over every show. Instead of handing out cigars, they hand out hoagies. Just think of how people would react if Keem was able to book high-ranking guests. Like Ninja or PewDiePie, or bring the trio to E3 to do interviews with game developers. They can bring in retired wrestlers, maybe John Cena still needs money out of his China fund and can be on the show. The opportunities are endless, and it's prime for laughs on a daily basis. Even if it's not super popular after a while, it's still a perfect recipe for memes and there will still be entertainment to be had. But you know what? I think SIDESCROLLERS sabotaged this deal out of jealousy. They didn't want any competition in the gaming sphere. Only they are allowed the top spot as a gaming podcast, nobody else. I don't have any proof that it was them, but it's just a theory. A gaming podcast theory. So, Phil went back to playing games for a living, spending a ridiculous amount of money on his business. He left a big, nasty, wet, green fart in the presence of the SIDESCROLLERS, and he stormed out of their lives. The bridge is burned, but the podcast idea is still on the table. Will he eventually take the deal? I say there's a high chance he will. Call me crazy, but I look at the patterns. Phil will say that he won't do something in a million years and that it's stupid, like Minecraft and reaction videos, and then 11 minutes later, he'll be doing it with a big goofy grin on his face. He is the master of going back on his word. Pretty much, you know that when he says, "I will never do X," then it means he will do it. Although I don't remember him saying that he would never murder someone.
Get ready for the next battle.
Anywho, let's end this madness with a bit of advice to you, the viewer. If you want to get ahead in life, don't do what Phil is doing right now. Apparently, it costs $5,000 a month in upkeep, so it must be costly. He works every day in his hamster wheel, so it's time consuming. The goal in life under a capitalist society like, well, every functioning society in the world, is to make enough money now so you can enjoy your life later. I want this video to end on a high note, so Phil, if you're listening, this is a part of the video where I teach you how to fix your 10-year plan. I know I put it at the end of a bunch of edgy humor and saying you're wrong about a lot of stuff, but this is the positive part. If you want to be a professional victim instead of a functioning member of society, feel free to ignore this part. People work when they are young. We do this because we have the energy to work. Eventually, we don't have the energy to work, our backs hurt a lot, our balls drag on the floor, and we get the old timers. This means that during our working time, we are to put some away for the time we cannot work. This is called a retirement fund. Some people try to put a big chunk of money into their retirement, and this is better than putting nothing at all. The problem with putting only money into a savings account is that inflation over time will decrease the buying power of this money. This is why, in an age of the petrodollar, we do not rely on saving accounts anymore. Instead, we invest in assets, which are things that increase how much money we can get out of them when we put money into them. For example, a stock is an asset when it provides dividends, or when I can sell it later for a higher price. If the investment provides zero profit, or costs me money to perform because the selling price is lower, or can't be sold at all, then it's called a liability. Having a car is considered a liability, because you cannot sell the car for more than what you paid for, unless it's something like a special value, like a vintage car that's fixed up. If you want to have more money for your retirement, you will need to do two simple things. 1. Plan out how much money you would need, including your Social Security. And 2. Plan out how much money you can get, including your Social Security. Not only this, but being old comes with frailty. Many old people will have health problems or issues with getting around on their own. Phil might think his wife can support him when he's 80, but who knows what will happen to her, or what will happen when he hits 90, or 100 for that matter. This is where some form of support is needed, so people have two options: family or a caretaker. I believe that the most appropriate thing to have in life is a family member take care of the elderly. Call me old-fashioned, but that's the best way to have the cycle going. The parents take care of the child, then the child takes care of the parent. In the US, people just throw their parents to the old folks' home and hope nothing bad happens. Sure, that works when there are problems in the family, but that's not what a loving family does when the old person is still, you know, acting human. Should Phil have a child? As crazy as people will call me for my answer, yes. I believe he should. I think having a child will set him straight and maybe bring a better life than what he has now. Some people will think this is going to result in child abuse, and I don't believe he'll be an abusive parent. Neglectful because he wants to stream all day? Maybe. But there is a thing about ego that surprises a lot of us. Even if he's egotistical, he will still try to use that ego to then take care of the child in what is socially acceptable. But since his line of work allows him to have his kids there with him, I say, why not? He featured Panda Lee in his video, so this wouldn't be any different. A child might help him when it comes to living as an old person without a nurse at his side, but he will still need money to fund all of that and his retirement. Let's assume that he can only make $80,000 a year. Let's say that this is the only number we can work with and he needs to find a way to save for retirement and pay his bills. The best thing for him to do is to reduce how much he spends on bills. I have no idea what he spends on electricity, but it must be in the hundreds every week if he's always leaving the lights on and has the systems on all day. He's always ordering Uber Eats and Instacart when he has a car and the wife works part-time. Why does he need a car again? He is also always trying to buy the latest games, which I believe he makes up for with the Game Pass, but if he's spending $5,000 a month on his business, something tells me he's spending too much on games. Either that, or he's writing out the whole mortgage as an expense, and that means he's paying $5,000 a month for a house. Why does he need a house again? What exactly is stopping him from living in an apartment? It can't be credit, because you don't need credit to get an apartment when you have income. Credit is there to get a loan, because when you ask for a loan on something, your credit score determines how reliable you are when it comes to paying the money back. Since Phil went through bankruptcy as a person instead of as a corporation, his personal credit score went kaput. Possibly around 200 points. This means that he needs to be very careful and always pay his bills on time for about 10 years so that the negative effects dies off smoothly. He can do this by reducing a lot of his expenses around the house. And Dave Ramsey repeats the mantra of living on rice and beans, which is true. If Phil keeps ordering delivery to his house, that's about $10 extra every delivery that he doesn't need to pay, and if he does this even once a week, that is $5,200 wasted a year. Again, WWE Champions means nothing compared to that. Also, if the food he ate was some of the cheapest stuff you can buy, like lunch meat sandwiches or just a daily bowl of refried beans with some vitamin C to prevent scurvy, maybe cereal or oatmeal in the morning, he could easily reduce the cost of food down to something like $100 a month. You might think I'm crazy saying such a low number these days with how inflation is going, but it's possible. If Phil is living off of $20 for him and his wife every day, that's about $600 in food every month, meaning he could cut out $6,000 from his yearly expenses just by living on the cheaper food. The very thought that he's wasting $11,000 a year on food deliveries alone is why everyone was so flustered during the interview. They couldn't do the math I did because they're on the spot, but this is probably what was going on in their heads when they heard about his financial woes. The best thing for Phil is for him to get rid of the house, get rid of the car, living on rice and beans, and no more date nights. get rid of all the useless garbage in his house, turn off the air conditioning, and have a little fan blow away from the mic. I saw a video afterwards where he went to a car wash recently and complained about it. He didn't need to go to the car wash. Do you know when the last time I went to a car wash was? When I was a kid, because it was really cheap that long ago. I never even washed my own car. I wait until it rains and I drive around. That's my free car wash. Nature does wonders. With all of this money being saved, he can easily place some money on the side into stock, crypto, some kind of IRA, or start investing in some endeavors like renting out houses and making his own games. Keemstar made his own games, and Phil loves mobile games. I'm sure he has some ideas for something small, and I'm sure there are people who'd love to help do something with him. Hell, H3H3 made a game, so it can be about anything. No matter what, when a person wants to make money with assets, the goal is to make sure the money is working for them. Instead of putting more hours of our lives into labor, we are meant to put more money into interest and gain more money through sales. If we assume Phil can save the $11,000 or so a year, this means by the time he's 65, the retirement age, he'd have $250,000. Wow! That's $250,000 for you yokels. But if he puts the money into something that gives him around 4% a year, his money would result in about $500,000 in the same amount of time. That's right. Compound interest for 25 years at the rate of 4% would grant him double the money. The average return for the S&P 500 for the last century has been 10%, meaning that he could end up with $1,400,000 with the same initial deposit of $11,000 a year. If he puts in double the money, he would cut in half the time required for the same amount. In other words, Phil, if you really want to make more money, you'd put the controller down for a single day and plan out how much money you set aside for investments and stick to them. Pay the investments first and pay yourself after. But for anyone thinking about investing right now, I would hold off on any big numbers or risky moves until we hit a depression. All the alarms are going off that a depression is coming very soon, so once that happens, you hit anything you like when it's down, and if it's a big company that refuses to die, it will rise back up and take you with it. In the meantime, keep the money in a separate account so you can keep it, instead of wasting it on stuff you don't need. But I have no idea how anyone can get this through Phil's head, when he's still trying to impress his wife after marrying her and when he's dedicated to being a professional victim.
Get ready for the next battle.
I didn't want to talk about this next bit too much because it's all speculation, but Phil seems to be possessed by his anima. The anima is a man's internal feminine other, the part of our brain that holds everything we think is what a woman's all about. This inner relationship with our anima is developed at a young age when we interact with our mother, or who we see as the mother archetype. During the interview, Phil talked about his mother and how he still talks to her, but he didn't mention his father. He talked about still communicating with his father in other videos, but I find that there's a lack of a father figure in his mind. The lack of a father figure is the lack of a father archetype in the man's head, which reduces the strength of his masculine side. Men who are raised by single mothers tend to come out as a rowdy bunch because there's a lack of order, even if the mother is authoritarian. This can also happen when the father is present, but there is a lack of authority and masculinity presented by the father. The weakness in a man's masculine side creates an environment of anima possession, where the man becomes controlled by his feminine side, which is based on his mother's archetype. Already, this might explain why Phil appears as a shit-talking coward. He will talk big, as a woman does, and then run away when there's a threat. He will say something to get people angry, and then he hides in his shell when danger appears from it. This happens because, socially, women are allowed to have big mouths. They act like children and throw tantrums, which creates the Karen that everyone knows and loves, all because they feel like they can. And feminists wonder why women are single these days. The anima-possessed man is doomed to be a beta, obeying women and even seeking women for some kind of comfort that they feel is a requirement. Every reaction will be an emotional one instead of a logical one, because now the man is thinking like a woman. But not just a woman, an angry, unpleasable woman. Any confrontation will be seen as an attack, just how Phil did during that interview. Masculine men don't act the way Phil did. When a masculine man sees an issue in life, we find a way to solve it instead of running away to let the problem fester. That very thing is why the government hates the idea of masculinity, because it gets in the way of authoritarian control. Weak men are easier to control and are more likely to vote for government control, because they are not confident in running their own lives or doing things for themselves. Weak men demand for women to run their lives and be in charge. Women are not designed to be the man of the house, because they try to use their animus to make commands. I fear Phil is possessed by his anima, and his wife Kat is possessed by her animus, which is a recipe for disaster. I don't want this to happen. But if they are possessed by their opposite archetype, their relationship would result in the wife being a bitter shrew and the husband into a spineless jerk. What sucks even more is that as they enable each other's bad behavior, the two people will eventually split up, and since they need a mate to depend on to keep the anima or animus in power, they will find an even more toxic relationship and the spiral continues. All of this can be avoided through the man taking action and entering the stage of self-discovery through his anima. According to Jung, the anima comes in 4 stages of integration, which determines how a man will react to his anima. The first stage, called Eve, is when an image of a mother is formed, and the man is unable to function without a close tie to a woman. This can also be considered the mama's boy stage, since the man will usually be trapped under his mother's wing, especially if he's smothered and treated as a baby. I think Phil is a bit past this stage, so it's not that drastic. The second stage, called Helen, is based off of the myth about Helen of Troy. People fought over her and tried to kill for her. The man here would seek out sexual partners through a dependency on sexual stimuli. This can also be considered the porn addiction or Don Juan stage, because the man would feel a drastic need to worship the female body and sacrifice everything for a crumb of coochie. The third stage, called Mary, is when a man takes a religious feeling towards women with the intent of a long-term relationship. This is the stage where the man can tell the difference between love and lust, with his love for women being more like a friendship than a sexual dependency. The woman is now independent from his needs and is separated from his life, but there is still a love dependency that plagues his mind and his dreams. The final stage, called Sophia, is when the feminine separates from the human female and is now the mediary between the conscious and the unconscious. This is a stage where a man can actually live side by side with his anima because he sees her as a part of the world rather than a thing to worship or use. The anima has become Mother Earth and allows him to be wiser from realizing this. Sophia is just wisdom, the feminine of the world, and the muse to the artist. It's not a person we had to rely on, but something more like a Mother Earth herself. Birds, plants, the tides of the ocean, the glow of the moon, these are the things that we can look at to find the Sophia stage. As for the father figure, this can come in 2 forms. An actual father figure that you look up to, or God, or any other type of sky father. Phil said that he was Roman Catholic in his youth, and it seems religion was a part of his life that he left behind. I know that I'm talking a lot about religious things, and there are tons of people out there who think this is a bunch of baloney, but Phil needs a father figure in his life to have order. I don't think that he can think of one on his own, and I don't know if his father is around for him to respect when it comes to masculinity. The anima-possessed male needs a sky father for equilibrium when there is a physical human father absent as a representation for it, or for when the father himself is possessed by his anima. I don't expect Phil to go back to being religious, and I don't think becoming Roman Catholic is the answer to his problems. I'm not gonna say Phil needs to pray or ask for forgiveness or get baptized or anything like that. He just needs a clear head to focus on what matters in his life. And gaming all day is not what matters. He says he wants to make meaningful content, and apparently him being bored with the games he's trying to rush through is meaningful. I call that a bunch of baloney. It is far more meaningful for Phil to start a family, get his life in check, and seek inner guidance with a Skyfather and regain his footing against his Earth Mother. People like Phil feel vulnerable when they are injured and in financial trouble, and I am certain taking a religious journey for his midlife crisis is something that will do wonders for his mental health. The thought of something above us will instantly bring us down to earth and off our high horse. The ego loses power when God is present because there is no reason to include others as opposition when God allows us to be in this together. I think it would be a great thing for Phil to at least go to church every Sunday too, perhaps for a bit of networking. It will make him feel humble. He can learn about the people in his area and make friends. He can still be his goofy self and still drink. I don't think that any of that will be an issue. Some of you might think the way I'm ending this video is gay or preachy, and I can see why people will think it is. I'm trying to bring religion and Jungian philosophy into a discussion about a man-child playing video games for a living and rejecting an offer to box with another fat guy in the ring. Maybe I'm going crazy after seeing his history and being part of the community since I first saw his Heavy Rain playthrough way back when, but Phil is someone I see some hope in. As goofy as he is, day in and day out, as many times as he repeats the same mistakes, I feel like he has a chance in learning his lesson and eventually taking responsibility. If he doesn't, he'll be an old man, still playing video games, rocking around in his chair, and who knows how much debt he'll have by then. I don't want to see it. Even for the meme. Some memes aren't worth it. But if he gets caught jerking off again on camera, that would be pretty funny. This video won't be the last one on Phil, but I'm gonna make sure I have spaces in between any of his drama. There are tons of other channels that update everyone faster and better than I ever could. My channel is more about hitting a subject as hard as possible with logic when logic is absent. This one just so happened to end with me saying the subject needs Jesus. Maybe I'll make a few reaction videos here and there. Phil's highlights seem to be behind him, deep in the past where they belong. But if he agrees to the Keemstar deal, you bet your sweet ass I'm gonna be making a video saying, I told you so. Till next time.